Hello, welcome to You People. I'm your host, Roy Koshy. Well, we have a really exciting program for you tonight, or today, whenever you're watching this. My guest is Daryle Lamont Jenkins. Daryle is the founder and executive director of One People's Project, which is a civil rights organization based in Philadelphia and is commonly associated with Antifa. Daryle is also prominently featured in the upcoming documentary Alt-Right Age of Rage, which opens on August 17th. Here's a trailer.
There's a gentleman by the name of Richard Spencer. He's basically known as a right-wing propagandist, and he's always had these hate politics coming along with him.
Have you ever met Antifa? What are they like?
Daryle Lamont Jenkins is a black activist whose job it is to try to silence people like me.
There is no doubt that the alt-right has been attractive to angst-ridden young men. Frustrated and ambitious young men who change the world.
The author of the Charleston Massacre was radicalized and ultimately committed mass murder based solely on what he read on the internet.
I certainly did not want it to happen, but I'm not going to play into their game, denouncing the movement.
Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment, but if what you say does cause some sort of harm, people are allowed to respond. We all got to step up. We cannot ignore what's out there. We got to fight back.
They are doing it for us. It's not me convincing people through rational argumentation. We've entered a new stage where political violence has returned.
As far as I'm concerned, you pick this fight, now fight.
My policy is never back down.
The ideology is a prescription for mass murder.
Breaking news, terror in Charlottesville.
Extraordinary is that it's about to get worse.
Please welcome back to the program, Daryle Lamont Jenkins. Thank
How you doing? How you doing?
Good, doing good. How are you?
Can't complain. It's been busy since the last time I came across here.
So, Daryle, you were on the show back in 2014, maybe around this time, actually. It may have been like the fall of 2014.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around then. I mean, we were talking about a lot of the police brutality activity that was going on, or rather the activity against police brutality
Right,
at
yeah.
that time.
Yeah, we were talking about people calling the police on black folks.
I was wondering if you was going to bring that up,
Yeah.
because if you notice now, people are responding to that.
Yeah, that was always like, that was, and I guess like this is a good thing that people kind of like broke the code on that one and like, oh wait, it's not just the police. There's somebody sicking them on us, and now we've discovered that element in the equation, basically, of
Well, see, here's what's interesting, and I've been trying to tell people this for a while now. It's like you always hear the right take pot shots at us every time we go after the police. They always have something smart alecky to say or whatever.
Right.
They're not saying a word about us going after the folks that are calling on the police, going after the folks directly.
Oh, I didn't consider
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we heard them go after our folks in Starbucks. Yeah, they had something to say there.
Right.
But all the other ones after that, Barbecue Becky, Permit Patty, and all them, you see us going after them. You see them getting fired or going through whatever hell.
Yeah.
Nothing, not a peep from those usual conservatives that like to pop off with something stupid to say back at us. And that says to me, we hit on something.
Yeah,
we hit on something.
Well, so like, why do you think that is? I mean, is that just because like if you go after the police or the institution of the police department, they have their talking points of like it's a dangerous job and it's they're here to protect us and and if you didn't commit so much crime, all that stuff. Is it just like with the, is it that indefensible, like when we see like the person like calling the cops for a frivolous thing? Is it just they don't have anything to back it up now?
No,
or?
I think basically what the deal is that although we do have our issues with the police, of course, I think we hit on who the real problem people are when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of people out there who can't get over themselves, see black people in their eyesight or whatever, and think it's time to cause them some grief. And they're being directly handled in that regard. I'll be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why a lot of them don't like Antifa, because Antifa goes directly after the right.
Yeah.
And they can harass Democrats all day long, but they really don't like it when they get harassed back, so to speak.
Yeah. I wonder, like, I guess, like, on that, like, so the person calling the cops, is it, because I feel like a lot of like the people that you were just now describing on the right who would take pot shots at people who aren't on the right who criticize police brutality. It's weird that like these folks would like these are the sorts of people who would just call the cops on you know a black person of color being in the wrong neighborhood. I'm just trying to figure out like how they haven't figured out their defenses yet of Permit Patty or BBQ Becky.
Because there aren't any.
There just aren't any?
There just simply aren't any.
Yeah.
We're catching them dead to rights.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Even, and let's be fair, even the police, when they come up to these scenes, are looking at the situation and going, why didn't you just leave them alone? Like the guy who was drunk and tried to harass the woman who was wearing the Puerto Rican flag.
Oh, yes.
Why did he do that?
Exactly, yeah.
And look, but look what happened in that case. You had a police officer just standing there while he did all the harassing.
Yeah, you're right.
And he got fired.
Yeah.
Because he should have made a move. He didn't make a move until somebody took matters into their own hands and tried to tell the guy to get going. And then that's when he decided to get between the two of them.
That's right, yeah. And then, like, even like in the incident in California, I think it's like Bob Marley's granddaughter or something, like the woman who called the cops on them. Like, yeah, even if you watch that video, you can see the cops, their heart's not in it. They're sort of like, ugh. Well, that, like, I mean, because that's something that James Baldwin in the 60s, there's an interview in the late 60s where he talked about, they asked him about police brutality, and he said something, I'm not going to phrase it as eloquently, but he talked about, like, how police brutality and the police generally, they actually represent, they're a symptom of the wider culture, basically. So he doesn't blame the individual police for being the way they are. It's a culture that's directing them to sort of act this way. And I think, like, he spoke about that in the late 60s, and I guess, like, now that we have all these smartphones and we have all this maybe concrete evidence.
That's exactly what it is.
It's just like people are now aware of that.
That's what makes the difference between what happened back then, what happened in the 80s and 90s and so on, and what happens now.
Yeah.
Because we're a generation that can actually show you what we've been talking about all those decades, all those generations.
Right.
And the only thing that gets me upset about it all is that we can't go back and help the Filipinels and Cedeños and the Eleanor Bumpers of the world, you know. We have to deal with who it is that is getting harassed and killed today, because we have the evidence showing people exactly what happens. I mean, interestingly enough, one of the things, if we're going to go back to the police, one of the interesting things that you see now is the fact that the police will say one thing in the report, the video will say otherwise.
Yeah.
So.
Of course, yeah. And that's, we have that concrete evidence. And I guess here's maybe something that is frustrating about that. It keeps happening. Like you had the first round. I mean, over these last couple of years, you've had people get exposed for calling the cops for frivolous reasons. But then, like, it just keeps on happening. Like, it keeps on, like, you know, even, like, here in New York, you had, like, the Aaron Schlossbergs, the racist guy who was threatening to call ICE on these two women who were speaking Spanish.
Who's tight with I should know, Schlossberg is tight with all these neo-fascists that we've been dealing with, by the way.
Yeah, he was at, like, some of these marches, right?
Yeah, he was every time you see a video of Schlossberg, he's hanging out with the Proud Boys. And Proud Boys being one of the hate groups out there.
Yeah.
And no one's really talking about that aspect of it.
Right.
But the fact that he is hanging with them should be something that we should keep in mind. Too.
Absolutely, yeah. But I guess even like after that incident and that like made people protested outside of his apartment, it kept on happening. Like I think like BBQ Becky happened after that, the Permit Patty, and even, like in the Bay Area.
Even this guy, Bay Area is just getting their teeth kicked in with these clowns. You had BBQ Becky. You had the guy, I forgot what they called him, who was throwing a homeless man's stuff into the lake. You had the one who was messing with the girl with the water. The 8-year-old girl who was trying to sell water on her stoop. She was another one. It was just happening more and more in the Bay Area. That was San Francisco.
Yeah, that was.
And so it was just like, what's going on in Oaktown?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I kind of think like the liberal cities. This is my opinion. I lived in the Bay Area for a little while. Like
there is a thing to that.
What's that?
There is a thing to that. We're not necessarily talking about the right wingers.
No.
Despite what I just said earlier, we're not necessarily talking about right wingers.
Yeah, it's people like who have sort of like weirdly, because of they've decided that they've absolved themselves of racism, and their own racism just sort of, I guess, came out in different ways. That'd be like.
But now there's another weird thing that's happening. Here's where there is a case of probably fighting back. Normally we find out who these characters are within maybe 24 hours. But we've just had a couple of cases right now where we haven't found out who they are. Who is the guy who yanked the black man out of the train car having a seizure? I still haven't found that out yet. Maybe we have. I just haven't seen anything online about that guy.
Yeah, neither have I. You're right. I've seen the footage, but not. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, now we're getting to the point where it's a possibility some of these folks are being protected by the people that are close to them.
Yeah. Well, so here's my question about that. As we're being exposed to the racism that causes police brutality, and like we're seeing like the actual people who cause this whole problem, it doesn't seem like it's getting better.
Yeah, going back to that.
That's the problem. Yeah. Like, I mean, so what? Like, so. Is it just like, and there? It's not like there's no consequences. Like people do lose their jobs, they lose their practices, they lose whatever. A lot of these people, like, the Permit Patty person lost her. I think she lost her business. I can't remember now.
Permit Patty, I believe, was running a marijuana
for dogs
thing,
or something.
And I think, that's right. She was doing that. She was getting her dog stoned.
Yeah.
But yeah, she had she lost her business. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in regards to what keep happening. When this has been going on for over 100 some odd years.
Sure, yeah.
So it's gonna take some time, I am guessing. Having said that, they better pick up the pace.
Well, that's the thing. It's like there's direct consequences. Like the CVS manager got fired. The CVS
forgot about him.
Or whatever. But people are still motivated to do this. So like even like the guy who, like what you just now said, the guy who dragged off the black man on the train. And we haven't found out. And so what is it that motivates people? There's consequences. Like, you're going to get fired, or if you're going to protect yourself from that, it's a lot of work for you to, like, go delete all your stuff, go delete your online life. Really, you got to protect yourself a bit. So, like, is it really worth it?
It's what my father would refer to. My father will refer to something like this as unconscious racism. These folks actually don't think that it's a problem. Harassing somebody that they have already had in their mind all their life is beneath them.
Yeah.
They're actually shocked when those same people or people that are down with them are pushing back, saying, "Leave them alone. What are you doing? How in the world do you think that you can just yank somebody off a train?" Yeah. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, even without a camera, that doesn't make any sense at all. But yet they do feel this way. And I think it's just going to be more and more of us asserting ourselves to push that back for good. I mean, I think that's basically where it's come down to. Yeah, let them keep on doing it, and we'll just keep on videotape them, and we'll keep on costing them their jobs, and we'll fill their roles.
Yeah, totally.
That's another thing that's coming up too. I mean, the fact of the matter is, they can be replaced.
Yeah, well, I guess,
and they will be replaced.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because like I think I get hung up on the psychology of like why people are doing things that they do. So like, and it's just like it's this very weird, like the idea of whiteness is already a fiction. I mean, sorry white people, but there's really no such thing as white people. It's like, and like so many people who are considered white, like Irish, Italians, Slavic people, Germans even, like weren't considered white at times. Like they were sort of like the other.
Oh, definitely not. I always try to tell people, as a matter of fact, I was speaking with one of the white supremacists and said, hey, look, there used to be a time where you could not just lump yourself in one white category.
Yeah.
You tried that nonsense maybe 150 years ago. If you were Irish,
yeah.
Says, no, you're Irish. We're not the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, but it's something that people are willing to lose their livelihood over. This idea of like being part of this whiteness, and
They
that
don't think
which
they will.
What, yeah, is that
They never have before.
Yeah.
It's just over the past year. I mean, look what happened to the kid that called on John Crawford in Ohio at the Walmart, the one that we were talking
about
about
last time. Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, John Williams Crawford III. Look that up. And what was the guy's name who called the cops?
I cannot remember his name. I always try to keep John Crawford's name in my head, but I can't remember that dude's name. I think that there was a threat of him getting arrested.
Yeah.
But nothing manifested. I think he basically was able to go on with his life.
And then I think like somebody on the news was like, "Do you feel bad?" And he was just like, "Nope."
Nope, he doesn't.
Fucking crazy.
There's no reason for him to feel bad. I mean, no one has ever told him you should feel bad about. No one has made him feel bad.
Right. Yeah.
Probably because we can't remember his name. So,
yeah.
But I think about all the other things that have gone down over the past year or two. I mean, there was a story about a kid who missed his bus and had to walk 45 miles.
Oh, yes.
He got lost, knocked on a door. That woman opened up talking about why is he bothering her and leave them alone. This is our neighborhood, whatever. And her husband in the background's loading the shotgun.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
He's in jail now, the husband. So, I mean, there's something out of that. But that was just before the Starbucks thing.
Yeah.
But then there's also the things that have happened in recent weeks that show you what will happen when they decided they don't need to call the police.
Right.
Florida, where he saw a woman in a handicapped parking spot. White guy saw a woman in a handicapped parking spot, figured that he would try to cause her grief. Her boyfriend sees him causing her grief, shoves him aside, he shoots him.
Oh yes, this is he was able to
in the name of stand your ground.
Yes.
So the police chief has a chip on his shoulder. He's going up there basically talking like shit happens.
Right.
And now Al Sharpton and everybody is down there now. So he's talking about maybe Al Sharpton should mind his business or whatever. Well, everybody else is down there wondering how come you ain't taking care of business as a sheriff. Maybe that sheriff should be removed. If he's going to get cocky about some clown that decided deadly force was the way to deal with somebody that was in a handicap spot.
Yeah, exactly.
And he wasn't a cop. Bad enough the cops have that kind of attitude, but this was a civilian.
Yeah.
In Florida?
Yeah.
For the second time now?
And for the second time. And also like that stand your ground defense is not applied equally.
No, it is not.
Alexander, I believe her name is.
Yes.
She actually was like, when you learn about those facts, she really was standing her ground and did not get her out of that. So it's this arbitrary. People like invoke it. It's a law.
I'll be honest with you. I'm a gun owner, and if I'm in Florida and something goes down, I'll take my chances. I'll take my chances. If I have to go to jail because some clown is gonna try to harass me for like Zimmerman. Truth be told, if it was something like a George Zimmerman situation, soon as I saw him going for whatever in his pocket, that's what happened. Trayvon Martin saw him going into his pocket.
Yeah.
He was reaching for his cell phone. But what if that was a black dude reaching for his pocket and Trayvon Martin was a cop? What would have happened to that black dude?
Oh, absolutely.
So I transfer that to me.
Yeah.
If Zimmerman did that, I would have drawn down on him.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, maybe the cops would have came by and broke it up before anything would have gotten too far, but my attitude is we both would have walked away alive. Pissed off, but alive.
Sure, yeah. It's... Yeah, let me circle back.
We can go on forever, man.
Yeah, that's a deep topic, but I do... I want to highlight... I want to transition a little bit to... one of the reasons you're here and returning to our show, you were featured in this documentary called Alt-Right, Age of Rage.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what this documentary is about?
Well, it debuted at South by Southwest back in March, and it's directed by Adam Balalow, and it was originally supposed to be about Trump's first year.
Yeah.
As they went along with filming and talking to people, they realized they had something else on their hands.
Right.
And more to the point, it ended up turning into a documentary about myself and the things that I go through as an anti-fascist activist.
Yeah.
And Richard Spencer. Basically, it's about me versus Richard Spencer.
Right.
Who, I should stress, is a white supremacist.
Yes.
Is the executive director of the National Policy Institute.
Right.
Yes.
He's put the dapper, respectable look on white supremacy. Although, like, I guess he's not so much getting away with that anymore. Like,
I think after all the stuff that had gone on, most recently in Ann Arbor, where he tried to go on a college speaking tour, I think he's getting burned out. Charlottesville burned out a lot of folks.
Yeah.
On that side.
And
yeah.
Alt-Right, at least it looks like from the trailer that we showed. It looks like does the movie culminate in Charlottesville? Is that what happened? Is that
pretty much? Okay. Pretty much. I'm so. I got to tell you, it was so funny too because it was like they had already been filming to begin with.
Yeah.
And they was basically telling me, yo, whenever anything is going down, just let us know what would be the best things to go to and such. I told them, yo, you might need to come to Charlottesville because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And everybody is mobilizing around it. So they pretty much went to Charlottesville because of me.
Oh, okay.
So I'm glad the cameras were there capturing a lot of what happened and from our perspective, I should say. But they also did something else. They also covered a lot of the other events that were happening prior to Charlottesville, particularly the American Renaissance Conference that takes place in Nashville every year, or rather at the Montgomery Bell Park Inn just outside Nashville. And
the American Renaissance Conference, who's that run by again?
That's run by a gentleman named Jared Taylor. American
That's
Renaissance is a publication.
That's right. Yeah.
That's been around since, I believe, 1990. It's basically a white supremacist publication. And they hold these conferences every year, which is supposed to be of the upper crust of white supremacy.
Yeah, Jared Taylor's in he talks about you in the trailer, basically. He talks
he
like
does.
this, and he's, well, it's the white race, you know.
Yes, Daryle Lamont Jenkins is basically a hater. He hates people like me. Jared, later for you, man.
Yeah.
It's not about you. You're old and going to die soon.
But that's sort of like Jared Taylor is sort of maybe, he's sort of like maybe the step before Richard Spencer, like the guy, he's one of these
He's
people
considered
like,
to be the godfather of what they now call the alt-right.
Right, like he's a sort of, and that was like the alt-right is like this attempt to...
And truth be told, Pat Buchanan is, but that's another story.
Pat Buchanan is, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, but you talk about Pat Buchanan as the well from which all of this springs. Pat Buchanan is a friend of Jared Taylor's. Pat Buchanan also employed Richard Spencer.
Yeah, that's
and
right, yeah.
The thing about it is, when you start, this is one of the things that we was trying to warn people about well before they started calling themselves the alt-right, because these folks, as opposed to the swastika wearing, cross burning knuckleheads that stand on courthouse steps, these folks were inside the courtrooms. They were inside the colleges as our professors. They were our police officers, and they were, most importantly, they were our politicians. And we was trying to tell people, look, these folks have real careers. They want to advance themselves within the Beltway.
Yeah.
And you've got to really pay attention to these guys, because these are the ones that are going to cause damage. Trump got elected due to them. So
yeah, and it's very interesting because, you know, obviously, like, you know, 4 years later you're back on the show and we have a different president now.
Yes.
And so the presidency of Donald Trump, that has sort of brought all this stuff of like alt-right, not neo-Nazis, crypto-fascists, all these people have like come to the surface, and they're a lot more. It's that combination of like having a president who espouses those views, having a team in his administration that espouses, like your Stephen Millers and what have you. And it seems that like a lot of neo-Nazis are just openly running for office right now because they're very emboldened.
Well,
but you're saying
that attention to them now. They've always ran for office. I think we're just paying closer attention to them now.
Yeah, and that could be like the fact that like maybe this is all coming to the surface could be like the internet. It could be like just technology the way it is that just we can't help, but you can't ignore it almost now. But like so like you are saying like it's interesting to think about it that way. Like instead of thinking about all this like, oh, this is Trump's America. Trump has brought all this together. Like you're kind of saying that, correct me if I'm wrong, like this has always been America. These people like neo-Nazis have always these fascists have always just run for office, and they've won because like not enough people opposed them, or just not enough people took them seriously.
Right. I mean, I think that it's good that the open neo-Nazis are basically getting their teeth kicked in when they're running for office. But bear in mind, they actually do expect that. I always look at their campaigns as simply being fundraisers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you take a look at Pat Buchanan's run for the presidency, or Ron Paul's run for the presidency, which was rife with the same kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
They lost, but all of a sudden nonprofit organizations were formed by them in the wake of their loss. They used those campaign funds to fund the American cause in Pat Buchanan's case, and Campaign for Liberty in the case of Ron Paul.
So why shouldn't the left do more of that? Like why? Like that's a good.
And pardon my cough, by the way.
Don't worry.
I'm having a devil of a time.
No, man, it's okay. We're casual here. I guess like that's like what you outlined. I just don't. I mean, because I don't think that way often. Like I mean, like oh yes, I know that it happens. Like I mean, a lot of extremists run for office, and then like they obviously don't. They maybe don't even expect to win, but it's like they do build a career. They get their name out in the public. They get their face on the mainstream, and then like they go on speaking tours where they get paid. So they kind of build this.
But there are some that do actually win. I mean,
of course,
I'm going to call out Steve
Donald
Scalise.
Trump. Yeah,
Donald Trump. Everybody knows, but everybody keeps forgetting about maybe Steve King in Iowa, who's making no bones about who he is, and Steve Scalise.
Yeah, Steve Scalise,
who has spoken at one of David Duke's events.
Yeah, he called himself David Duke without the baggage.
David Duke without the baggage. I mean. Excuse me again, but he's one of those folks that got a pass because no one was paying attention to people like him.
Yeah.
And yes, you can feel for him getting shot last year, but that's as far as it goes. Well, some of us can feel bad about it. I mean, I'm indifferent. But but the truth of the matter is you still have to pay attention to what he is there for. Right. You have to pay attention to what Steve King is there for.
Yeah.
And when you talk about what we should be doing, we're doing it now. Because one of the important things that I have been saying in some interviews over the past year is that in order for all of this to stop, the demographics are going to have to change in Congress, in our state houses, both in the governor's seat and in legislatures around the country.
Yeah.
Local school boards, for God's sakes.
Oh, yeah.
We as people of color cannot just go out there and vote. We have to go out there and run.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah. And
that's what's happening now. And you see how angry some folks are getting about that.
Yeah.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's okay. So that's interesting. That brings up a couple things for me about like diversity or demographic changes. So to challenge that a little bit, many would say that under Barack Obama's presidency, it's very telling that Black Lives Matter arose under Obama's 2 terms and
Occupy
Wall Street. Yeah. So like a lot of people would say that Obama he was still another gatekeeper for the status quo, meaning the interests of white mainstream America. Now, a more nuanced, not to get too deep into this, but like a more nuanced take on that is like, whenever he stepped out of those bounds, like he was slammed like that one time, like it was like Henry Louis Gates is
Stupidly remarked. Yep.
Yeah, he mentioned that the cop acted stupidly, slammed by not just the right wing, like even like by white liberals, respectable liberals who would vote for him. So I guess like that's the problem too, because I don't know that the demographics shift is always going to be the solution.
Not always.
Because
no.
and I'll bring this up because at the time that we're taping this on August 8th, 2018, this past weekend there were two alt-right kind of neo-Nazi, neo-fascist rallies, the Patriot Prayer in Portland, and then there was another alt-right rally in Berkeley on August 5th.
Actually, also a third one, Providence.
And they got run out like after 20 minutes, right?
Yes.
That was pretty awesome. Yeah, so
I was in the one in Portland.
You were the one in Portland. Now, do you remember, Danielle Outlaw, who's the first African-American chief of police in Portland? Now, again, look this up on your own if you want to, but a lot of footage has shown that, like, the Proud Boys, the Patriot Prayer people, a lot of these fascist groups, these right-wing fascist groups, were able to march peacefully, and they had police protection. And when counter-protesters showed up, and when I say counter-protesters, it's not just Antifa, it's like a lot of citizens in Portland, they were attacked by the police, basically.
Yeah, I'm going to explain that one. I'm going to explain. But what I will say about the whole thing about the demographic, it's not 100%.
Yeah, because Danielle Outlaw, the African-American chief of police, is still oh, the cops did a great job.
Yeah, see, bear in mind that some of the Proud Boys and some of the Patriot Prayer folks are of color. I mean, I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
But but like I said, it's not 100%. You're not going to get a good politician that's going to just do everything right. Obama showed that.
Yeah.
But I brought up Occupy because that was what responded to that.
Yeah.
Because Occupy, everybody always wondered, well, what was Occupy really about and all? And it's like, Occupy was about finding solutions to our social-political issues without having to go through the corrupt political hierarchy that we have in this country.
Yeah.
We also saw that there was one particular thing that was causing problem, and that was money, i.e. the banks, and we zeroed in on that.
Yeah.
So, and who caused us grief? Who shut us down? The Democrats.
Yeah.
Democratic mayors all over the country shut down Occupy.
Absolutely.
So, so one of the things I will stress is that we do need to change the demographics. The change of demographics is going to help somewhat. I mean, Obama didn't do 100%.
Yeah.
But he did something. Something that whatever he didn't do, that's up to us to fill in the gaps.
Sure. Yeah.
In some fashion, some way or another. But
yeah.
Back to Portland, what happened was the Proud Boys weren't really able to march. We blocked them. There was like 200 of them at the waterfront. That's where they were mustered up.
Yeah.
They've been having these little rallies month after month after month, and they didn't come there in the name of free speech. They come there in the name of fighting. They just kept on saying that, and they've been saying it for the past year.
Yeah.
One of their former attendees actually killed someone some time later, and Jeremy Christian stabbed two people in the train. In Portland.
He's an Oregon guy. That was Patriot Prayer, right? Jeremy Christian.
He's Patriot. Well, they're saying that he wasn't Patriot Prayer. Of course, they're going to say that after he killed someone, but that's another story. But what happened was 200 was a good number for them.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, thanks to Alex Jones, they was able to promote their latest rally. So they mustered up over at the waterfront. There was 200 of them. There was 2,000 of us.
Okay.
They did, as far as I know, they did want to march across a nearby bridge.
Yeah.
We were over there, so that probably kept them from doing so.
Okay.
I cannot say that 100%, but I did understand that they wanted to march across the bridge. So they simply went back to where they were standing originally.
Yeah.
The whole thing was basically a shouting match between the two of us.
Okay.
Between the two sides. And calling them out for various things, calling them names. They're calling us names, chanting USA, USA. And I always hate it when USA, USA is being used as an FU to other Americans.
Yeah.
But what happened really is when you started hearing the chants, all cops are bastards, A, C, A, B, and then who do you protect? Who do you serve? When it shifted towards chanting against the police, that's when everything started. That's when the police started firing the flashbang grenades and started pepper spraying everybody and rushing the crowd. That's when it happened. They tell you that they was trying to protect themselves from projectiles coming from Antifa.
Yeah,
but
did you see any of that?
No video. I didn't see any of that, and I was standing right there.
Yeah.
And there was no video showing that happening at all. The first shots were coming from the police. There was some Confederate flags on the so-called Patriot Prayer side.
Yeah.
That kind of like runs afoul of being a patriot.
Right. Of course.
So
very treasonous.
So they had Confederate flag shields. It was coming from an Arkansas-based group called the Highwaymen. They're neo-Confederates. Okay. The spokesperson for the Portland police suggested that the Confederate flags were planted by the antifascists.
Right.
They were not.
Yeah, how would that
not.
logistically even happen?
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, like, so why would he... I mean, those folks were armed on
Why
that
would the
side.
cops do that in the first place? That's the question. Once the cops start doing things like that, you got to start wondering, well, who do you protect? Who do you serve?
Yeah, and so it's sort of, and again, you know, I had some friends in Berkeley who said the same thing, that the cops blocked off counter-protesters. They built a physical wall between the counter-protesters and like the fascist groups that were marching, and they turned on the counter-protesters.
Yeah,
again.
and that's the problem that we've had ever since Charlottesville. I mean, we've had it before, of course.
Yeah.
But when you start, I mean, I saw in the Noonan where basically the rule.
Noonan, Georgia, yes, they turned
Noonan,
on
Georgia.
yeah.
They kind of sort of did it with the next American Renaissance Conference this year. There wasn't any fisticuffs or anything like that, but they really fortified the park so that we weren't even able to get to the end, even though it's supposed to be a public place. Yeah. I mean, they basically took the park away from us. I mean, they took the inn away from us.
So
when that should not have happened.
So, okay, so like on that, like, how do you, I guess, so as we're taping this is happening before August 12th. Mm-hmm. Now, August 12th is scheduled, what's scheduled for August 12th is the Unite the Right 2 rally, the sequel that no one wanted, except for...
Not even the white supremacists these days.
Yeah,
either.
exactly. Even they.
Yeah, we need to talk about that one.
Yeah. First one flopped. So that's going to take place in D.C. Daryle, you are attending this, or you're?
Yes, I will be down there. I'm going to go down there on Friday and just to get myself situated for Sunday. It's going to happen on Sunday, and what people. The organizer Jason Kessler says that there's going to be about 300-400 of them. Mm. But if you go online and you listen to what the white supremacists are saying, if you go onto their chats and stuff like that, they're basically warning everybody to stay away from this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so Kessler may have a few people. He may be by himself.
So I guess, can you share with our viewers when you are going to counter-protest one of these rallies, especially something as prominent as this one? Mm-hmm. Even if like what you're saying is true, that like a lot of white supremacists are trying to back out of it, can you maybe just give a brief overview of how you prepare to be a counter-protester at one of these events?
Well, I will tell you, for me, I'm a reporter. Mm-hmm. So I'm going there to cover, I'm going to document the Nazis, mm-hmm. how many of them there are. That's how we do it. Anti-fascists in general, they basically find out who their legal representation is. They're going to talk amongst their trusted people. They're going to go as a group. They're going to wear protective gear from whatever it is the cops or the fascists are going to do to them. That's pretty much what the deal is.
Yeah.
And but that's the more hardcore Antifa. I mean, you're also going to have folks out there who are just going to be prepared to go out there and oppose the Klan or the fascists or whatever, and they're going to have their signs, they're going to have their banners, and they're going to basically make it clear that we don't want this.
Yeah.
Just like they do anywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's going to be the kind of drama that we saw in Charlottesville.
Right.
I don't think that the fight is in the Nazis to even come out, let alone oppose us. I don't think D.C. is going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
Especially that close to the White House.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a case where everybody does their thing and then they go home.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So is it like, I guess like for anyone who's interested in protesting, is it just sort of like maybe like reasonably taking care of your, like, you know, maybe having an emergency contact? Is that a good idea?
It's good to have an emergency contact. Usually people like to write it on their arm if ever they get arrested, so that they have it with them regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
And considering how much the police have basically, the lesson that they taken from Charlottesville is that they got to strong arm us.
Yeah.
So
that was like, I don't know if you saw this doc. It aired last night. It's a Frontline documentary about Charlottesville. It was like Frontline and ProPublica. Yeah, like there's a lot of footage there. I knew this was happening, but they do show a lot of footage in this Frontline documentary about the Charlottesville debacle of cops just like when DeAndre Harris got beaten up, like there were just cops outside of that parking garage.
Yeah, I mean,
just chilling. Like
it just really said that that police had a choice: either stand down and let the fascists fight fight Antifa, or they'll do it for them. I mean, one of the things about Portland that really ticked me off is that when the cops started in on us, the fascists were cheering them on.
Yeah.
And that happens each and every time. The fascists cheered them on in Noonan. The fascists cheered them on within the confines of the park in Nashville. And my attitude has been, look, if the fascists are cheering you on, you're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
You are fighting the wrong people. Unless you're one of them. And then we're right about you bastards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess like how do we, I should say, how do we combat that? How do we like because that's the police, like that's, you know, like these right-wing neo-fascist groups, it's like, you know what they are.
Well, you know what? I think it's basically going back to the whole thing we started this conversation with. I think when we talk about the people who like to call the cops on folks, you start with them. And I don't mean trying to appeal to them or whatever.
Just,
Excuse me. Conservatives in this country have basically made it clear that they believe that the police are their shock troops.
Yeah.
Conservatives, by their silence from when we're calling, are making it clear that we're getting too close.
Yeah.
Go after those conservatives who are about trying to protect the police at all costs.
Yeah.
They're protecting the police because they think that they are going to allow their agenda to go forward, and that cannot happen.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is you got to get those conservatives out of power. You got to get that right wing out of power.
It is kind of like that James Baldwin sort of perspective of it's really like they're not the source of the problem. They're the symptom. They're doing the bidding.
And I say those right wingers from both parties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that's what we're dealing with now too. I mean, I always try. Here's something I've been making a point of, and this is important when it comes to New York, because New York really has a problem with this. We know that Donald Trump's a white supremacist. We know that Donald Trump's a racist, and he has been all his life.
Yeah.
And there is no question about that. We have established that. We know that. He's been a Democrat a lot longer than he's been a Republican.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Democrats allowed that to happen. New York Democrats have a problem with black people. We have seen this over and over and over again. Ask David Dinkins. The problems that we had with Ed Koch back in the day. They always go after black people in the name of law and order, which was foul. Yeah. And when we spoke up, somehow it became anti-Semitism.
Right, yeah.
And that was foul.
So that's a great topic of discussion. The white liberal. I think about this a lot. This Martin Luther King. I'm not going to read the whole quote, but Martin Luther King's. He said, "First, I must confess that over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate." He talks about like how he doesn't fear. It's like with the Ku Klux Klaner. You know where they stand, but like the white liberals are often in the way. And like I guess like as someone who you've been identified, and it sounds like you wear this label yourself as Antifa.
Yeah.
What can be, so we know like the conservatives, as you outlined, we know what they are, and we kind of actually know how to go at them a bit now. Now, like these white liberals, like what do we do about that? Like the ones that are demeaning Antifa and being like, oh, well, you should find more respectable ways.
We ignore them. We ignore them.
Ignore
them. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much tell them just get the hell out of our way if you don't want to get into this fight. That quote that you got, that was a letter from a Birmingham jail.
Yeah.
And that was in response to a letter that a couple of white clergymen, wrote called A Call for Unity, where they were saying that Martin Luther King was a rabble rouser, and that we should allow our grievances, we should file our grievances within the court system. Well, the court system wasn't working for us back then.
Yeah.
And just like now, this current system as it's structured is not working for us the way it should be. This whole thing where they tell us that we should respect the freedom of speech of Nazis while they disrespect ours for speaking out against them.
Yeah.
Is being pushed back on. I mean, people are getting really sick and tired of just the mainstream liberal, because we do have black liberals that are playing this game too.
Oh, yeah.
And you start looking at some of these folks who call themselves centrists.
Yeah.
And you really recognize them for being right-wing, recognize them for being conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, they just held a conference or a meeting in Ohio, a third way thing, where something called Third Way.
Third Way, okay.
And it was basically those so-called centrists that was trying to come up with a plan to push back against progressives in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and you're right. Like you are seeing that. Like there's a backlash against Ocasio-Cortez. You expect it for the right idiots, the right-wing idiots, but like it's happening. Yeah, a lot of centrist Democrats, a lot of like old school Democrats are like pushing back against her now, and all of her peers.
Oh, I was ticked off about that Wall Street Journal article where they said we are either going to be the party of Ocasio-Cortez or the party of Bloomberg. Bloomberg's not a Democrat.
Yeah. What is it? Just like, is it just people just not being that creative? It's like these folks sort of think that like, well, it's like I can't tell if they just have a romantic view of like civil discourse, and they think that the other side is respecting that process of civil discourse, and they're just either just ignorant, or they're just uncreative, or they're just like they don't see what's in front of them. They're just in that much delusion. Like, what do you think?
Well, they better get over themselves fast, because at some point the Republicans are gonna pick up on this, and they're gonna realize that they need to kick their bigots to the curb. Because they can't keep winning presidential elections on technicalities.
Yeah.
This is the second time in a row that the only reason why they have a president is because of the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, we can keep the Electoral College in place regardless, but they have to look at that. They are not winning the popular vote, which means they're not popular. And they need to change that. And the only way they're going to change that in this day and age, they gotta do more outreach beyond that they are currently reaching out to.
But here's what I wonder about that. Are they really running in fear? Because they seem to push their agenda through.
Yes, they got lucky. They really got lucky.
Well, not just with the presidency, but like even something like net neutrality, like which most of the
they got lucky. They wouldn't be able to do any of this if the Democrats weren't playing their shenanigans. Yeah. I mean, I'm not all big on major parties to begin with, but the fact of the matter is, the only reason why conservatives in this country have a leg up is because of the conservatives within the Democratic Party. They want to keep fighting and doing this whole back and forth instead of giving us the candidates that we want, that we say that we want.
Is it just job security? Like, is it just sort of like that? They're comfortable, like the Schumer.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's job security. They don't care about the country. They don't care about evolution. They are conservatives. They do not do that.
Yeah.
So they are going to maintain their party. They are loyal to their party. They're not loyal to the people that put them in office. And they know that we notice that.
Yeah.
And they're going to fight that. And that benefits the worst in political society.
Yeah.
Now, this is part of the reason why I brought up the whole thing about the demographics are going to have to change. At least for this, it has to change. Because, excuse me again, if we push back and we start changing the demographics in the Democratic Party and we start winning more and more elections, people of color and such, Republicans are going to freak out. They know that they have to do that too.
Yeah.
And that means they're going to be reaching out to people who would generally vote Democrat. And here's the fun part about that. That means the Republican Party may just become the new liberal party.
Like
or go back to their old liberal ways.
Over this way, yeah.
It switched before, it will switch right back.
Yeah.
The Democrats will become the conservatives, Republicans will become the liberals. That can happen if, mind you, the other political trend doesn't manifest itself, and that's people getting sick of both parties and saying, we're going green, we're going libertarian, we're going independent.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 20 years. November will be 20 years since Jesse Ventura won in Wisconsin. Was it Wisconsin? Minnesota, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and what party was he on again?
He was, I think he was Reform.
Okay.
I think he was Reform, but for all facts and purposes, he was independent, but he was not Democrat or Republican.
Right.
Ever since then, we've been trying to do something to get more control of the political process because the Democrats and Republicans have been holding it hostage. We have tried to, the 2000 election spoke to that. Ralph Nader spoke to that. Mm-hmm. Occupy, Black Lives Matter. Yeah. All of these efforts has spoken to the fact that we got to do something about our political process. The first black president spoke to that.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, a guy who has never held a political office or had any kind of government position in life speaks to that. He sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendously.
Evil. Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, yeah, it is actually indicative of people wanting the systems not that we have right now is just not working for anyone. So, like, I guess, like, it is still strange. I mean, look, I'm very much a big advocate of, like, vote for the person who's opposing, like, 2020. Like, I am an advocate of that. Like, I don't, even if I'm not enthusiastic about the candidate, like, I guess, it sounds like, to sort of, like, pull out to a bigger picture of what you're talking about.
Okay.
And like I was saying earlier, I think I sometimes get hung up on, like, the psychology of, like, well, why are people acting like this, and, like, what can we do to change people, you know? And you're kind of talking about, like, okay, it is what it is. Here's how we fight it. I have noticed a trend amongst a lot of people of color, a lot of anyone who's, like, non-cis het white male, and it's something that drives me up the wall, of people being like, oh, white people, white males, I need you to recognize your privilege. I need you to understand, and I need you to, like, I need to know that you understand your privilege. And it drives me up the wall a little bit because I feel like the white males, the sort of status quo people who start to come to that, often something happens to them. Like, often, like, they feel like, not like, I'm not advocating, like, any retaliation, but, like, you know, obviously, like, often, like, they either go through some sort of a marginalization process, like either in class, like they come from, like, a lower class background maybe, or they grow up poor and they're marginalized that way, so they relate to other people. But, like, what is it about, so, and there's also, like, a lot of, like, undoing racism trainings and stuff like that, which I'm sure are fine. I'm sure they're great. Do you notice that trend of, like, a lot of non-straight white males kind of obsessed with, like, converting white people, or is that all in my head?
Well, no, you do see that. You do see that. And let's face it, I mean, we are living in a day and age where we are a more diverse country than we were maybe 50 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to have a generation of white people, a new generation of white people who grew up with that see the effects of generations past still relevant today. And they're trying to implore upon their fellow white people that they need to recognize that you can't do shit like this again. the way they used to.
But I notice people of color doing this a lot too.
Well, people of color are warning them.
I hope so. Yeah.
That's what that is. People of color are warning them. Says, look, I'm going through the door.
Yeah.
Do not block it. Do not call the police as I go through the door.
Right.
If you do, your ass is mine.
Yeah.
That's what that is. White people are trying to convey that in a nicer way.
Okay.
But we had enough. So.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit, just on this subject a little bit about, there's direct action of say the neo-fascist, neo-Nazi, like any racist person, bigoted person, just straight up opposing them, it sounds like what you do. Now, you were very prominently featured in another documentary called Erasing Hate, which focuses on, his name is Byron Widner. He leaves a neo-Nazi, I think it's the Hammerskins.
Brian Widener, he was in the Villain the Social Club.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's like a skinhead. That's a straight up skinhead.
Well, that's a neo-Nazi. We don't call them skinheads. But we call them boneheads. So.
Yeah. Because skinheads, that was appropriated.
Yeah, that's one of those cultural appropriation things that they got themselves involved in. But
exactly.
Yeah, he was a big time enforcer in the Villain the Social Club, former Hammerskin Nation. He was there for about a decade or so, and then he grew up.
Yeah.
And he had a series of tattoos on his face and hands and body. And his penance was to try to get them removed so he can go on with his life.
Yeah, and it's a good documentary. I recommend you check it out. So,
and I would note, incidentally, that movie that documentary has been turned into a motion picture.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so can you talk about that?
Yes, I can. It's still in production, and I'm still in post-production, rather. Right now it's currently called Skin, and it features Jamie Bell, Billy Elliot, as Brian Widener, Mike Coulter, Luke Cage, as me, and Vera Farmiga's in it. We know her from The Departed and Bates Motel, and
she plays wife.
She plays the wife of the leader of the hate group. Danielle McDonald, an up-and-coming actress, who we've probably seen in the movie Patty Cakes. From Australia.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's playing Julie, Brian Widener's wife or girlfriend in the movie, love interest.
Yeah.
And there's a few other recognizable faces, but yeah, this I've seen rough cuts and it looks pretty good, and I hope people were able to watch it and enjoy it.
So, do you think that is it worth those of us who are not Nazis, is it worth doing putting effort into rescuing Nazis?
Yes, but it's kind of like I'm my father's son, and my father was a drug counselor, and it's a matter of, for me, as it was with him, that they have to come to the realization that they need to change, and they have to come to you. It's good to keep the door open, and we do have an open door for things like that,
right?
And we will talk to you. But in regards to us reaching out and as that being our primary mission in life to help change Nazis, no, you either going to get out of it, or we got to treat you hostile.
So, and I'll bring up another documentary that I saw recently. It involves another Daryle. It's called Accidental Curiosity. It focuses on a man named Daryle Davis. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
So in this documentary, Daryle Davis makes a point of meeting Klan members, current Ku Klux Klan members, and just so that they can meet a black guy. That's his motivation of that's the problem is that they never met a black person. That's his origin story. You look at the trailer online. And so his sort of that's his thing, and I guess he's gotten some Klan members to retire. Now, there's a section in the movie that he meets with some Black Lives Matter activists, and they kind of come at him a little bit.
Yeah,
and he's a little condescending to them, and so I'm just sort of I guess for me, I watched that documentary and I had so many mixed feelings of all right, we know that we're all human beings. Nobody's a monster. These are all human beings who were born in this country, and they came to this situation in their lives through just a concrete lived experience. But there's just that part of me that is, why I guess, like, yeah, maybe you nailed it. Like, maybe it's like if they come to that sort of come to Jesus moment, and they have this realization of, like, you know, they want to leave. That's great. Like the Life After Hate guy, Christian.
Right, Christian Piccolini.
Like, that sounds like he's doing amazing
And Arnold
work.
Michaelis.
Yeah.
From Serve to United, one of the founders of Life After Hate.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. And I guess to me, it's like, I guess it kind of pisses. It's sort of frustrating because it's like I don't know that I don't want to direct energy towards saving anyone anymore. Like,
well, see, what the deal is, look, Daryle Davis, I don't have any issues with. I mean, however if you can get anybody out of that kind of nonsense, please do, by all means. If that's what you want to do directly, if that's your mission in life, okay, fine. I mean, I'm not mad at you.
Yeah.
But what I will stress is that think about all the damage that person has done to someone else.
That's the thing, yeah. And so, like,
they have a lot to atone for.
Yeah.
I can think of some of the folks that are in various groups now, young folks and folks that are in Charlottesville, and they're going to go on in like 20 years from now, even sooner than that. They ruin their lives. 20 years from now, people are going to start looking at them from 20 years before, seeing them in Charlottesville, and going to say, no, you can't go forward. But some of them by that point would have changed. And they would have tried. And their mission in life from that day is that they got to reconcile what they did back in the day with who they are in the future.
Okay.
And I don't have a problem helping somebody do that.
Of course.
But one of the things...
It's not your job.
One, it's not my job, although I make it my job from time to time, but it's not my job. They have to reconcile themselves. But here's the biggest problem. There's somebody behind them, somebody behind me that they hurt.
Exactly, yeah.
And they are going to have to figure out how to atone for that. And that's one of the things that One People's Project is famous for. We don't let them off the hook. I think one of the reasons why Daryle Davis catches some hell here and there is that is because people feel that he might be letting a lot of these Klan members off the hook.
Yeah.
And
I had those feelings when I was watching that documentary.
It doesn't help when people go, use him as the template of how we should approach neo-Nazis. We should talk to them. We should be nice to them and all that. I would even I would even defend Daryle Davis in the sense that I don't think that's not what he's trying to do. He's not just trying to be nice to them or just talk to them. He's trying to stop the racism that's going on. If you do not pay attention to that part of the mission, primarily, then you might be part of the problem.
Exactly, yeah. Because you are seeing that, like, you see, like, these sort of, like, respectability, like, columns now in, like, major newspapers, like the liberal New York Times. Like, you have people like, oh, civil discourse with Nazis. You'd get further. We shouldn't.
No, we don't.
Nazis. Yeah, exactly.
No, we don't. Telling them to go to hell is what gets us further.
And in fact, like, on that, I want to share something, a video, really quickly. This took place on July 28, 2018. In Fort Tryon Park, which is in the Washington Heights area here in New York City. Very diverse neighborhood, by the way. It's very a large Dominican population there. There's also, like, a large Orthodox Jewish population up there too. But there's a lot of different. It's very diverse. It's a lot of people of color up there. Identity Europa, which is another white nationalist group, they did a march through Fort Tryon Park. Here's a brief video.
And the rocket's red glare, the most bursting in air, gave through to the night. What's your name, pal?
Don't touch me.
What's your name, pal?
Don't touch me.
I'm not gonna touch you. That's a weird name, though, huh? That Star Spangled Banner, yeah.
Don't touch me.
You're touching me! Look, he's touching me! Touch me! Touch me! Touch me! Woo! Brave!
So yes, that was very openly. They were marching in Fort Tryon Park. That's a park that's the reason I'm riled up about this, I have spent a lot of time in that park. I really love that park. And so to see these Nazis marching through a place that I frequent quite often, and then of course, like, you know, you see that and your brain starts to associate with like Nazis marching in the 1930s. It just makes you feel like, oh, they're here and we are now reliving that timeline again. Now, Identity Europa, that's one of the groups that you have followed.
Right. I mean, they were, before Identity Europa, they were called the National Youth Front.
Yeah.
And they were an organization that was founded by a larger organization called the American Freedom Party, by members of the American Freedom Party, also formerly known as American Third Position out of California.
And who founded the American Freedom Party?
William Johnson,
Okay,
a long-time white supremacist activist out of California.
Right, okay. So,
And basically, they've had about 4 or 5 leaders since they started back in 2014.
yeah.
And they had to change their name, and now they're calling themselves Identity Europa, so that's how everybody knows them.
Yeah.
The beauty about Identity Europa, however, is that, yeah, they can march, but we pretty much know every last member because they put themselves out there like that. We got pictures, we got videos, we got names.
Yeah.
The guy who was doing singing the national anthem is a guy named Ian Hoffman. He got arrested in Charlottesville during the Tiki Torch March. He got involved in some of the fisticuffs there, and he got snatched up for it.
Right. So I guess, so he got arrested in Charlottesville about a year ago, and here's also what bugs me. So there was, in the Frontline documentary that I was talking about earlier, Emily Gorsinski, who's filming a lot of like the evening of the Tiki Torches, and she was, you know, getting attacked too, trying to like hold off, like, you know, facing off against like these right-wing groups. She talked about like how she felt real rage, but she noticed how happy everybody was. Like, it was called a happy rage. So, you know, watching that video of these guys marching, and that one hipster sack of shit, like, be like, you can touch me, you can touch me.
I think I know that character too. He's catching hell. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, Antifa's on him.
Oh good.
Antifa's on him. So.
Good. Yeah.
So he doesn't want us touching him, of course, but that's another story.
Yeah. So like, so like that's, so two things about that. Like, it's happy rage. Like, even though like one of those guys, the guy you just mentioned, got arrested, like, you would think that like that would deter the guy a little bit, you know, but it seems like he's still like arrogantly, like, you know.
Well, let him be happy. I mean, ignorance is bliss. So, but here's the deal. That's the way they always play their game. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan, I mean, they started as being the happy, joyful guys. I mean, calling themselves cartoonish names and things like that. So that's a thing that they do all the time. It's kind of like a defense mechanism for doing some of the most heinous crap known to man, of course.
So I guess my question is like, so is it just a performative? Is it just a hollow performative act?
Exactly.
Or you don't think like they're like feeling like real confidence of like, yeah, we got the guy in the White House. Is that
no? There is some of that, but it's fleeting, and they know that the pressure is on. How do you know that? That particular rally was done as a flash mob, incognito, clandestine, without anybody knowing it was coming.
Nobody knew about it.
Yeah, it's not like they was announcing, yeah, we're going to be in Washington Heights, because they wouldn't be laughing all that much if that happened.
Oh no, yeah, and there was like a rally after, like a vigil afterwards too.
I mean,
more people were there.
Let them laugh. We have the last laugh because they can't do that with us knowing.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay, so here's a fun thing for everyone who's aware of this story. So I walked through Fort Tryon Park on August 4th, just because I wanted to go visit. I was a little wary. I was like, I better look for like rocks and sticks and shit like that in case somebody's coming back to stir some shit up, you know. So in Fort Tryon Park, the Black Israelites also congregate there. They don't bother anyone. They just literally like hang out in groups and they talk to each other, reading their Black Israelite Bible that they have, you know. And so I actually went to one of them and I said, like, hey, were you guys here last weekend? And they're like, we're here every weekend. I was like, okay, so did you not see the Identity Europa people walking through here, the neo-Nazi, the neo-fascist group? And they were like, no, I didn't know that they were here. I was like, well, they walked in this area. And then they were like, I was like, yeah, they were carrying like a banner. They were walking through here, and they're like, oh, those guys. I thought they were just coming off a soccer game or something. And so, like, here's an interesting thing. Okay, this is funny. My dream would just be like that the black Israelites would recognize them immediately and pounce on them.
They won't do that.
They won't do that. But the funny thing is that the Identity Europa people, the people who claim that they want America to be, they want to stop the invasion of people of color. They want like one race. America is for Western white people. They pass by a group that they would deem a scourge on America. Didn't do shit. So that's kind of interesting.
No, they're not going to pull marching. Listen, if they were going to be clandestine and doing this march in the first place, the last thing that they want to do is pick a fight while they're there, because then everybody will come out.
But they were harassing people, though. Like
they were harassing people when they thought that they could get away with it. But when they didn't think, how long were they there? Think about it like this.
Yeah.
How long was Identity Europa out there in Washington Heights? It wasn't like they spent an hour or two there. They were there for probably, I guess, at the most 20 minutes, and then they were gone.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. That's how it works with these groups. They're just basically, like you said, putting on a show. It's all a show, but you know what? We got better shows. We upstage them all the time. Now, in regards to the Israelites, you got to bear in mind something about groups like that. They are also separatists.
Yeah.
And more to the point, whenever I hear them speak their tenets are the same as Christian identities.
Oh, yeah.
They're Christian identity tenets. They're the same as Aryan nations.
Yeah.
So there is some sort of, if they were to talk to the Identity Europa folks, they'll probably try to discuss how can they do this? How can we separate? So no, they're not going to pounce.
Yeah,
they're going to ask, okay, let's put this together, despite the fact that none of us really want either of them doing anything.
Yeah. Well, so I guess on that performativeness, and you mentioned like the Ku Klux Klan starting out as like this sort of like jovial boys club.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like Identity Europa is playing. I looked at their website. Like they are playing that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Proud Boys
who would do that too.
And they, like those folks, especially the founder Gavin McInnes and all those people. If you accuse them of being fascist, they're like, "Oh no, this is just this is like a silly thing that we're doing, and you're getting worked up, you libs."
Who cares what they say? The fact of the matter is that's what they are. They know that's what they are.
Yeah.
And if they try to say otherwise, all we got to do is point to their boy in Portland wearing a shirt that said Pinochet did nothing wrong. You guys are fascists. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so, but that's like an interesting. I think it's just something to be aware of, though, from a lot of these groups, like the sort of. There are these aesthetic choices that they're making, and it's not so much like that they're, it's sort of like they're putting on this like sort of lovable, jovial front, and so it is maybe like while like none of us have to buy into it. Obviously, like we know what they are, they're scum, but like I wonder how much like how do you prevent, and maybe you can't do this. We kind of addressed this already. Again, the typically white liberals, the typically white moderates who are like, okay, well, how do you keep the fact that these guys are dangerous? Just how do you keep that in people's minds?
I think really we are doing that. I don't think anybody has any notion that these folks aren't dangerous. We've seen what happens. One of the guys from Identity Europa was shaking in Jeremy Christian's hand just a couple of weeks before he was stabbing people who were trying to protect women that he was harassing on a train for being Muslim.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think that we know them for who they are. This isn't really for our benefit, but for their own.
Yeah.
I think they're more or less trying to muster up their crowd and their crew, and what happened in Charlottesville made them realize that shit is real. Made them realize that.
Okay.
Because right after Charlottesville, when people were getting killed and all that, there were folks saying, I got to get out of this group.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even one person, there was a video of one of the guys at Charlottesville who took off his shirt, took off his white power shirt. I don't know what shirt he was wearing, but he says, look, I was just here to have some fun.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so that also lends itself to something that's also important. We got a lot, and this goes back to the whole thing about redemption.
Yeah.
About redeeming these folks. We are, in fact, dealing with a lot of young people who have too much psychological damage than a little bit, you know. I mean, and that's who we're dealing with here. That's what we're dealing with any kind of gang members that we see out there.
Sure.
And ultimately, that is something that we are going to have to address. Now, that doesn't get them off the hook. When they do wrong, they're going to pay for doing wrong.
Yeah.
But we do have to recognize the fact that a lot of these guys are catching hell in their private lives. I mean, you know.
I guess like maybe, and this is maybe like my own shallow surface analysis, but like a lot of these guys, like that joke that the guy made, the Black Israelite guy, his observation, it was a joke to me. That these guys are like coming off a soccer game. Like, yeah, like the Identity Europa people, like they look like a bunch of rich yuppies.
They are.
Like rich hipsters.
Many of them are. Many of them are. Many of them are not. I mean.
And the Proud Boys as well. Like they're all a bunch of rich hipster yuppies.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, but Gavin McInnes, come on. He was.
Yeah.
He's basically established hipsterism with Vice.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, in the 21st century, hipsters have been around for a while. That guy like basically like is a poser. He's like a
he is, and let's not make that clear. But even look at Gavin McInnes. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about somebody. I mean, people have accused him of being an alcoholic. I mean, you know that. And Matthew Heimbach from Traditionalist Worker Party, who was not only an alcoholic, see what kind of mess he did when he was. He
some weird affair with like a stepmom.
No, this is weird. I mean, so let me point this out and explain it. He was having an affair with his stepmother rather, who is married to the co-founder of the Traditionalist Worker Party, who was also the stepfather to his wife. His wife, Matt Heimbach's wife, was the daughter of Matt Parrott, the other co-founder.
Yes.
First wife. So he was having an affair with Matt Parrott's second wife.
Wow. Okay. Master race.
They better be all masturbating.
That's what I meant. No, I guess like so. Yeah, there are people like who have like kind of very complicated situations, but like, and again in this Frontline documentary, like there's this group like Rise Above movement in Orange County. Orange County's a nice place. The Identity Europa people, like they seem like. There's been this narrative that's just been put out by the left often and by like a lot of liberals that like these are all like white working class people like who just come from broken homes. Some of them do, and of course like the broken like that part I do sympathize with actually, but like a lot of these guys they're well off. Like you grew up comfortably.
Richard Spencer grew up well off.
He grew up I grew up in the suburbs of Dallas myself. Richard Spencer, I didn't grow up in the same suburb that Richard Spencer did, but he grew up in Preston Hollow, which is like that stereotypical like gated community, rich neighborhood. Like that's where like that countless films and TV have made fun of, like that sort of stereotype. And so it's like, I guess like what I bristle at a little bit, and because I used to be somebody who's like, okay, you must have been motivated into your life of hate by some bad shit, you know?
Yeah.
Some of them have, certainly, like the Byron Widner story. Like a lot of bad stuff happened, a lot of abuse happened in his life. However, like a lot of people are very comfortable, and I don't know if it's just like that they couldn't like branch out from their fathers or something, or what they did, but like I don't like that. I guess like it's what's motivating these guys to do all this stuff? You don't need to do that stuff. Like
they grew up a certain way.
Is it just that
they grew up very, very privileged and entitled?
Yeah.
And for Richard Spencer, I think this was all just fun for him, for a while. In fact, he stopped doing it because it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
He never really had to put in real work out there in life. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everything was just handed to him.
Yeah.
And so he really didn't know the reality of today's society. So he didn't need to know.
Yeah.
But when reality of today's society started creeping up, you know, he decided to lash out with this kind of crap.
Yeah. Is it just is it sort of like that growing up like this? I mean, like, we know this, growing up like that, it can be kind of a hollow existence because like you said, like, everything's handed to you. You have like maybe like just, you know, it's understood that you're going to be, you're not going to have to really struggle. And sort of like it's the ego maybe coming out and saying like, well, I should branch out. Okay, well,
yeah, but then you take a look at those who had everything handed to them. Now you still, when you're talking about the folks that had everything handed to them, you can't still be talking about psychological damage.
Yeah.
There is a need
True.
for belonging.
Yeah.
All of us have it.
Yeah,
we want our lives worth a damn. We want a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of these cats, the wrong people have given them that purpose. Mm-hmm. When I said that Pat Buchanan was the well from which a lot of this sprung, you're talking about, in the case of Pat Buchanan, somebody that grew up with racism as the foundation of the society he grew up in.
Yeah.
And ever since the Civil Rights Movement, he has been trying his damnedest to bring it back. Along comes these young folks who feel that they need to do something to make their lives worth a damn. They've figured out some sort of an enemy, or they were told an enemy by somebody, and they gravitated in that direction.
Right.
One of the things that really drives me up the wall right now is this whole incel thing.
Okay.
Involuntary
Say more about
celibate.
that. Yeah.
And basically, it's a bunch of and this speaks to the Proud Boys. They call themselves Western chauvinists.
Yeah.
They basically believe that women have a position in life that keeps them subservient.
Right.
And basically, they're doing everything they can to make sure that women remain subservient, do not work. They just basically serve their master or whatever. And when I see the chats and when I see a lot of these incels, so-called incels, talk, they'll tell you flat out they hate women.
Yeah.
They're not gay or anything like that. They just hate women.
Yeah.
And they kill women too. And that's the other
course.
thing that comes into play. I mean, we have Elliot Rodger that's done that. And I gotta tell you, I mean, you can recognize the psychological damage going on, but when it gets to that, I really get pissed off about the fact that we actually started, there's an actual political movement for guys who can't get laid. Now it gets really stupid.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, so like Jordan Peterson, one of these other icons, if you don't know who that is, maybe continue not knowing who he is. He's terrible.
You're so blessed.
Yeah, so like that guy, like it was expected that Jordan Peterson would say something stupid that like we should have an enforced monogamy policy to take care of these incels, like because like that's that guy's. He's again like sort of, he's the more alt-light, respectable version of like all the people behind him, all the terrible people. But like there were actually like columnists in the New York Times. I forgot his name. It may have been like Ross Duett or whatever. Like they were actually also. They were kind of making the same argument of like, well, like what about how do we take care of these incels? And it's like, and so people have been like proposing like, you know, well, sex workers are sex robots, and it's like, the fact is that like that's not going to solve the problem because it's they want people like you're just a robot won't take that care of the problem because like. They're sort of like they feel entitled to a woman's affection and that like a woman should be throwing themselves at them. And the sex worker model, that doesn't work for them because it's a transaction.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's garbage, and we know that it's garbage. And just like with any racist or with any neo-Nazi or anything, we push back against that, and we tell them, no, you are not going to turn society into that kind of crap because you can't get over yourself.
Yeah, and it's like that's what drives me up the wall too. It's like, but in this, especially like this incel thing,
Damn, I hate that nonsense.
And it could just be like speaking to like just how much misogyny and sexism is just kind of second nature in our society. There, you had respectable people like sitting there, like, well, let's consider like, what's a solution for this? Is it forcing? Should we guarantee them sex? And it's like nobody would.
No,
that's insane. Like. But like respectable society, like when they start dragging themselves, and that sort of speaks to like that thing we were talking about, like about people advocating civil discourse with like Nazis who would take away your right to have civil discourse, by the way.
And to that point too, incidentally, this is where we start talking about what kind of stunts some of these liberals out there are doing, because I can't stand Bill Maher right now because he keeps on playing this sexist, misogynistic game that's been going on.
And Islamophobic game.
Yeah, let's not forget that too. I do not want to forget that. But the way I first heard of Jordan Peterson was when Bill Maher brought him on in the name of free speech. Now, whenever Bill Maher brings somebody on in the name of free speech, that person's an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
That he likes.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see Colin Kaepernick on Real Time.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
His free speech is getting kicked all over the place, but Bill Maher hasn't had him on the show yet.
Yeah.
But Jordan Peterson, yeah. Milo, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I'm sitting there going, okay, so what's wrong with this guy? So I checked him out, and I was like, oh, come the hell on. And the reason why I brought it up is because, okay, Jordan Peterson talks like that. Jordan Peterson's a scumbag. Why is Bill Maher giving up a platform? Not that he should not be afforded his freedom of speech. Not that he should not be allowed to speak. But why is Bill Maher giving him a platform?
Exactly.
Answer: something's up with Bill Maher.
Yeah, and that's like because
he's done this before,
and it's so cowardly because it's like if you are into that stuff, just own it. Like it's like the guys like Bill Maher, Sam Harris.
Let's add him to the list.
New atheist people. But by the way, like as an atheist, wow, like these people have ruined atheism because like one of the great things about atheism is that like you don't have that tribal shit like the us versus them, and like you don't fear like the other religion. But these guys have just somehow like made atheism into like a tribal
Well,
thing.
frankly, Sam Harris basically solidified where I'm going to stand with him when he said that he seems like the only people that know that can tell you the most about Muslims are the fascists. When he said that, I was just like, okay, later for you.
Yeah.
We know what you're about now. There's nothing else you can say to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like the Karl Popper paradox of tolerance, where you're basically giving a platform for people who would take away your platform if they had the chance.
Exactly.
And like the idea of free speech has been so co-opted. Like so many people in Charlottesville, you see that footage of like that sack of shit. Baked lobster.
There was a Baked Alaska, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, we're out here for free speech. And it's like, okay, you could do that without marching with Nazis. You're here for the Nazis.
Look, if you want to defend the Nazis' freedom of speech, okay, go ahead. More power to you. But the fact of the matter is, if we're going to start calling them out and you shut us up.
Exactly.
Oh, no. That's not how it works.
I do want to talk a little bit about One People's Project, your organization. And I want to talk a little bit about, I guess, like as a way of like exploring just sort of the day-to-day experience of being an anti-racist activist or Antifa, as you refer to. Now, you were doing Antifa work before there was a name called Antifa. Mm-hmm. Now, what does Antifa mean to you?
Antifa short for anti-fascist, and it's something
it's
that
simple, right?
Yeah, it's a term that's been used for over 70 years, but it's fairly new here in North America, particularly in the U.S. And I first heard the term in '95, but I was in Toronto. Okay. And I think that it's pretty much taken on a life of its own. I think I might be the first person to use the term on national television.
Really? Okay.
It's a good possibility that happened.
Yeah.
I was on Rachel Maddow's program. Ironically, I brought up Rachel Maddow's program the last time I was here. 4 years later, I ended up on it.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I think I actually brought up Antifa for the first time on national television.
So, yeah.
It might be me.
Okay.
History.
So it's been sort of used as a slur as well.
To hell with the people who use it as a slur.
Yeah, and not just like from the fascists using it as a slur. There are a lot, and we've talked about this throughout this entire episode, the white moderates, the white liberals who like honestly think that somehow Antifa and fascists are the same thing. they'll say there's like an alt left, which is
yeah.
makes no
I mean,
fucking sense,
every
but-
time I hear the term alt left, I shoot it down.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to, because it wasn't something that we call ourselves. It was something that was created by the same people that gave us the term alt right.
Yeah, exactly.
So why are we playing up to their narrative about us?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so I do want to like explore that. Like, I feel like the liberals always fall into the trap that the right wing, that conservatives set up for us. Like, it's sort of like we end up like they'll set up like a framework, and they'll say something about us, and then like we'll somehow like honor what they're saying, and find a way to like, and we're trapped within their framework basically.
Is it a trap, really? I mean, I think that
Shouldn't
when we
be.
talk about those particular liberals, I kind of like people who are on our side. I do not put in the same category as those so-called mainstream liberals who are pushing back against Antifa and against anybody that's going after the Nazis. I think they got another agenda going. Either they themselves are very conservative and are trying to pretend that they're not,
Yeah.
or they have other things that they are working on that they're doing that we keep getting in the way of. I really like to know what that is, though.
Yeah, right.
But I would say that we have to recognize that some people are just simply not working in our best interests.
Yeah, and so I guess like that's sort of, and maybe like this is something that one could take from the Republican, from the right-wing playbook of like, we have our agenda, it's important to us, let's push it through, which they do all the time, despite like even like just in the number, on the level of numbers, like they're the minority in this country, you know. And like you mentioned earlier, it's like they didn't win the popular vote. And it's like, they push things that are unpopular and they get away with it all the time. I mean, this horrifying border separation policy that's happening. Whereas like Democrats often like, and I would even include Obama in this, like, we'll have ideas, we'll campaign on them even, but for some reason, like when it comes to dealing with other Republicans, it's like, okay, we gotta be civil, gotta reach across the aisle. And it could be that, like, I always attributed it to, like, just cowardice, or, like, they have some sort of weird, like, romantic idea of civil discourse, and this is how just things are done, and if the other side's doing it, I gotta take the high road. But it could just be that it's just, they you know, could be money. It could just be like they
I think a lot of this has to do with us asserting ourselves and making sure that if they are going to represent our interests, they're going to represent our interests.
Yeah.
I think it's really we got to simply push back on any kind of wishy-washiness when it comes to that. Because I'm gonna tell you something. There was a right-wing radio talk show host named Dennis Prager. Really bad. He's one of those guys on the right.
Prager University.
University, yes, indeed. He's
videos.
One of those guys that is predicting, quote unquote, predicting civil war in this country. And one of the things he wrote earlier this year was an appeal to the liberals to join them in their fight against their common enemy, the left. We should not be a common enemy to liberals.
Yeah.
So I mean, so they see something that's so at least at the very least he sees a kindred spirit in them, and that should inform the rest of us.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So that's and so like it just makes you wonder like how many like mainstream liberals like watch that, and I think there are quite a few who are just like, oh well, I don't agree with Dennis Prager on everything, but oh boy, these lefties are just as bad as these Nazis that are marching.
I mean, enough's enough on that. I mean, we fought this fight a little bit too much, and that's why I think that's one of the reasons why you do see a lot of people taking pictures of folks calling the cops on us, because it's like, you know, we're tired of telling you to leave us alone.
Yeah.
You're going to leave us alone.
Yeah. Well, so like on that, like in terms of like alliances, like on One People's Project, it's not a big organization, correct?
Right,
How many people?
Right. I would say about 20, 30 people now at this point.
What is One People's Project, what's their position within the wider anti-fascist movement?
I think we are seen as the intelligence gatherers. We provide people with the information that they need to go forward. And that's, to that point, that's one of the reasons why we do not try to engage in too much propaganda. We got to tell the truth when we're out there. There's no reason to lie about anything in this area.
Yeah.
I don't like it when activists of either stripe are more focused on winning an argument or advancing their agenda than they are about getting the truth out. I hate that.
Right.
If, for example, such and such neo-Nazi is not a member of the Ku Klux Klan, then we're not going to say that, no matter how sexy
Right.
it might sound
Right.
for the people who follow us.
Of course.
You know, I mean, if we get something wrong, we will correct ourselves. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, we are not there for the activists. We're there for the general public.
Right. Okay.
And everybody needs to get something out of what we do. And people respect that. And people want us to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they come to us whenever they want us to further some issue that they have, or if they just simply want to know more. I mean, one of the things that's important about Richard Spencer is that we're the first ones to ever really go after him.
Yeah.
We were going after him in 2006, and
Yeah.
because he just happened to be among the crowd of people that we were going after.
Yeah. So you consider yourselves intelligence gatherers, information
Reporters.
reporters, yeah. Like, so then what do you make about, like, I mean, do you have any sort of criticism or any thoughts on the way that people counter protests, like people who are not on the fascist side, like do you have any sort of like issues or criticisms with that, like how you mentioned, like, you know, trying to convince someone or win an argument's problematic. Anything else about that, like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to get mad about things about people who lash out, who are getting more aggressive out there. That's not my issue. But what I do get ticked off about is people trying to stop us from doing what we need to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody had written an article recently, probably even today, about how Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys is causing Antifa to lose the PR war. We're not fighting a PR war.
Right, yeah.
If you look at what is going on out there as a PR war,
Yeah.
you're losing the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, we're not doing this for optics. We're
Yeah.
doing this for results. You know?
Right.
And I think that is what we have to convey, and that's what to other people out there says, look, when you go out there, every time you go out there to advocate for anything, it doesn't even have to be this. But when you go out there to advocate, and you are going out there to see a result, to see a resolution.
Right.
If you're not, then you're doing this for yourself. And I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I guess, like, within that, do you see, like, is there a value in, like, just, like, changing protest tactics then? So
Always.
So for instance, like, I've seen a couple articles about this week in the Unite the Right too. Like, people have advocated, like, you know, instead of yelling back at the participants at the Unite the Right rally, hold a different rally and siphon off people there. What do you think about something like that?
I never did like that, but for some people, I can understand why you should. I mean, there are some people who can't deal with the direct confrontation. I'm not mad at them.
Yeah.
Discouraging people from engaging in direct confrontation, I'm mad at.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you can't do that. But if you want to have a rally out about a mile or so away, as long as it's in solidarity, as long as it's in conjunction with all the efforts that are being made that day, then by all means,
right,
have at it.
And so, and like, yeah, speaking of solidarity and working with other people, how much does One People's Project, like, I mean, how do you feel, like, within mainstream America, like, how big is your influence? Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm just learning it now, but I think we're getting a little bit of influence in the mainstream of society. I think because I'm one of the few anti-fascists out there that will actually speak to the general public, you see me all over the place.
Yeah.
So that means you're going to see One People's Project and our newsline, idavox.com, all over the place. So
Right.
I think we do have a little bit of influence when you consider that a number of the hate groups that we have gone after and certain individuals have suffered some heat because of us. I think there's some influence there.
And do you partner with other anti-racist, anti-fascist organizations?
Anyone that is fighting this, we partner with. It doesn't matter if you're the most liberal of organizations or the most hardcore leftist. Hell, you can even be conservative. If you're fighting this, we may have to talk to you a little bit more about how you're fighting it if you're a conservative, but if you're fighting this, we got you. I would always, it's funny too, because I always look at my Facebook page. I mean, my Facebook page, I have a nice little rainbow coalition of political ideas going back and forth, and it can get ugly because a lot of people like what we do, or like what I do in particular, that may not be 100% on board with me.
Yeah.
Or the other folks that are on my Facebook page. So there will be some serious arguments, especially when it comes to family members. Family members can be funny when it comes to some of the politics that that they espouse. But it's kind of like, look, the bottom line is we got to stop this. At least this is where I'm at. We got to stop this. Yeah. This is causing a lot more drama than we need in this day and age.
So it just sounds like. And like what I'm getting like from a lot of this conversation is it's about like not identifying the problem and then how do we get to the result that we want. Mm-hmm. That's your MO, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, look, here's the people that are causing the grief.
Yeah. Now,
what are we going to do about it?
And it's like, it's not worth it. Or, I mean, of course, like maybe it's not so cut and dry, but it's not so much worth like trying to convert anyone. It's not so much worth like trying to like.
I'll go back. I will go with the not so cut and dry. It's
if they want to be converted,
it is worth it. Yeah. It is worth it if in fact they convert.
Yeah.
If in fact they flip and stop all this nonsense.
Give them a lifeline.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to recognize folks as human beings.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you have to recognize that you are dealing with human beings. And going back to what I was saying earlier about the psychological damage you have to recognize that that's going on. Having said that, you also have to recognize that you got to protect yourself and everybody around you, and also recognize the damage that those people have done. So yeah, they can convert, but there will be a lot to atone for.
Yeah, but it's still like, this is still like we're not going to compromise our own vision of what we want the world to be like.
Exactly.
We're still going to fight for that. If you're part of it, great. If not, great.
I mean, we'll talk to you.
Yeah.
But most of the conversation is going to be about when are you getting out?
Well, yeah, so like, I mean, like that's what I was saying about like, the way that like mainstream liberals, mainstream Democrats deal with like the right wing right now. Like they kind of lost that. It's like there's no vision anymore, and it's sort of like, okay, what, you want to imprison kids? Okay, well, let's just work within this framework. And so, like, and then like when they like shoot back, like, oh, well, you don't agree with imprisoning kids because you love illegal immigration and you like crime, and instead of saying like that's bullshit what you're saying, they're like, no, I don't like. Okay, I just got to prove to you that I don't like crime, and they just kind of crumble, like, and so we.
But it's kind of like it frustrates me because it's kind of like I wonder exactly. What's the point in crumbling? Why are you crumbling? These people can be fought.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why my positions in life have gone so radical, so leftist. Because when I first got into political advocacy, I was basically dealing via Democrats because I thought that was my my route.
Yeah.
The one thing that just kept on frustrating me is the fact that I would see fights that we could win, but the fights would not happen.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why are you letting them do this? And it was something that I was talking about the last time I was here. The only people that seemed to want to fight were the people that were being hurt, which didn't have power, the people that were on the very far left, which didn't have power, who didn't have power, and comedians who were part of the mainstream, so they were able to score a few hits. Yeah. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. Right. We see that on the Daily Show on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like this didn't make any damn sense.
Yeah.
I mean, even look at it today. We talked about Mike Cernovich. Mike Cernovich put out a thing on Chuck Schumer a few months ago. Him and another guy named Charles Johnson of Got News.
Yeah.
Put out a thing trying to accuse him of rape himself, about being involved in some sort of sex thing. He called the police. Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, called the police on them, but then no follow-up, nothing. Why did Chuck Schumer allow Mike Cernovich to just do what he wants to do? Why did that happen?
Exactly, yeah.
Why?
Because if that was from the other side, if like the equivalent happened like to a Republican, like Mitch McConnell, for instance, like that other person, they would not let that slide.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of Mitch McConnell, why did they let him take a Senate seat? I mean, a Supreme Court justice seat?
Yeah,
I know how we can fix that, but they won't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, fact of the matter is, Gorsuch has a stolen seat.
Yeah.
When you get back Congress, you remove Gorsuch and put in Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
That's just the real. I mean, that's how it's.
Can they do that? Can they just?
Can they keep Obama from having a Senate seat? I mean, a Supreme Court justice seat. I mean, they did that.
Yeah.
Apparently, the rules seem to be going along as the Senate wants them.
Right.
So, and depending on who runs the Senate, and my feeling is, we're going to see what happens if the Democrats take the House and the Senate. If the Democrats have some gains, I want to see what they do with those gains. Totally. If they don't do anything with those gains, that's going to inform us in 2020.
Yeah.
And they were going to sit there and talk about the lesser of two evils back then and said, we gave you 2 years to show us that you can do something, and you showed us nothing.
Sure. Yeah.
And we're going to be pissed about that if that happens. If you can't get Trump out in these 2 years, and he really does need to get out before 2020, honestly.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then
or
we have to look elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We really do.
Yeah, I guess like do you look? I mean, do you see any hope? Like maybe, or I should say.
I always see hope.
Yeah. Let me get to that broader point of hope in a second here, but just going back to like One People's Project. Like that being said, like so you have like you maybe network and you have you overlap with other organizations. Like what about like bigger tent organizations like the NAACP, Southern Poverty Law Center? Do you guys?
We will work with them. We will share information because I think that it's important that we do.
Yeah.
I mean, look, SPLC has been in the game for a very long time. They have their ear to the ground, probably even a lot more than we do. I mean, on the other hand, there are times when we have our ear to the ground a lot more than they do, and we have to give them the information to let them know, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, yo, this is getting too big for us to handle. Here you go, help us.
Right. So, and then like on that as well, I guess just being on the ground, you know, like you have been someone. I guess the last couple of things I'll ask you. So, like, you've been on the ground. You've been facing the worst of the worst in this sort of realm in our country. Really, like a lot of like really genocidal thinking people, like what we would consider like just very evil people. Your average person like myself, like I read about it, I'll see videos, and I'll get spooked by it. You know, you've been confronting these folks. So my first question would be, with all these different groups that we've talked about that have been popping up here, within what you're seeing right now and comparing that to your entire career, do you feel like America is in the same place that Europe was in the 1930s? And if so, do you think it's going to be the same amount of bloodshed that happens?
I think that Europe is in the same situation that they see in the 30s. But I do not see the kind of bloodshed because we have seen, as we're alluding to, we've seen it before. We know how to handle it. Sadly, one of the things that we have seen before is how things went down in the 30s in regards to the liberals versus the progressives.
Yeah.
And really, that was what killed us
right.
in those days in Germany during the Spanish-American Civil War.
Yeah.
And Spanish-American Civil War. The Spanish Civil War. Spanish-American War was a son of a bitch too, but still, that's not what I meant. But it's kind of like we see it again now with the mainstream liberals versus the progressives, or as they call the Bernie Sanders supporters or what have you. And I think what's it's going to take to keep our dissent, our divisions on our side from allowing the worst of the worst to come through and take over.
Yeah.
I think what's going to make the difference is the fact that we are going to have to assert ourselves against the other side and basically take over and start running things. I mean, people want to see evolution. People want to see progression.
Yeah.
And if you're getting in the way of that, they're going to reject you if the people who want to provide that progression and evolution show themselves to be viable.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's all we have to do.
And so, I guess on that, like, you know, in your work, if you get, I assume you get threats.
Nah, see, because I'm like 360 pounds, so I think that a lot of the folks that will normally do death threats are pretty much like, that situation will correct itself.
Well, okay, so like just on a personal level and doing this sort of direct action, do you have moments of fear, and how do you get through them?
On a serious note, yes, of course. I mean, you have to be prepared for whatever.
Yeah.
And I do carry whenever it's legal to do so. And I carried in Charlottesville, no less. I think it's basically the thing that you have to be mindful of if you're going to get into the business of hassling people who make genocide a part of their political platform.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of people who can't jump into this fire the way that Antifa does. And I think that's one of the reasons why, despite how much liberals will push on us, there is still a respect, there is still some degree of support for what it is we do. Yeah. Because I think after Charlottesville, they realized that we bring the goods.
Yeah. Well, Cornel West was saying like that Antifa actually protected religious folks.
Yes, he did.
Back in Charlottesville.
And to this day, I have nothing but mad respect for Cornel West, particularly because he was the first person I've ever seen in the past 31 years of note to participate in any kind in this kind of rally.
Yeah.
I've never seen a person of note in a fascist rally. Maybe an anti-fascist rally. Maybe back in '99 when the Klan came down here, and but Cornel West traveled.
Yeah.
To Charlottesville.
Right, yeah. And so I guess like what do you feel hopeful? I mean, and so we're sort of seeing a lot of these groups come out. We're seeing a lot of this stuff. I think like there's a lot of people who this is really new for them. I mean, especially a lot of young people, like what we're seeing right now, especially like it being in the mainstream constantly. Do you but you've been seeing this for 31 years.
Yeah.
Do you see an evolution? Do you see a progression? Are you hopeful?
On our side, yes. I always see an evolution on our side. And I think that's one of the reasons why the fascism that we see on our side is so, I guess, reactionary. Is so dire. I mean, everybody looked at Donald Trump as the last great hope. I mean, for that particular brand of conservatism. It's a Hail Mary for them. Yeah. Because we have evolved. I mean, we've evolved so much, even the fascists are coming in brown, all right?
That's
you know?
True. Yeah, they got tiny.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the fact that the neo-Nazis that we are dealing with in this day and age has to reflect the society that we have in this day and age, and the society in this day and age is particularly diverse, that's a good sign that we're doing the right thing on our side.
Right.
Now we just have to convince them that, no, you have to get rid of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, you're siding with the thing that kept you back all these generations. And it's not going to work. We have been proving that for the past hundred years or so.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, look, I mean, those fascist authoritarian tendencies are not just limited to white people. I mean, obviously all over the world throughout history, there's been, they've come in all colors. Yeah, but representation matters in Nazism. I'm doing the clap emoji thing. So my last question is like, what do you do for like self-care? Like when you're in between your work, like in between rallies, in between protests, these situations, what do you do for yourself to keep yourself sane?
Keep myself sane. I sit there and just watch a lot of Doctor Who. The new season's coming up. Jodie Whittaker is going to be the first female doctor. Yeah. And all the incels are pissed about that.
Cool.
I definitely have to watch my superhero movies because I've been waiting for 30 some odd years to see what I read in the comic books manifests itself in film, and I'm loving every last bit of it, particularly the part where Luke Cage is playing me.
Yeah.
And of course, I've been in the music scene. I can't really do a lot of the stuff I did back in the day, not just because I'm doing one people's project, because I'm old.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way a couple of years ago.
Right.
But I, music is my thing. I love to make sure that I have the right music whenever I'm in a way. When I'm in that way, when I'm in that mood, it's just like I gotta hear something.
Cool.
So.
Oh, all right. Well, that's a great place to end. So I want to thank you again for coming down to.
Not a problem at all. I'm glad I'm here. Just have me whenever you need me.
Absolutely. I will take you up on that. The movie is called Alt-Right Age of Rage. It is in theaters August 17th.
I believe Edgewater in New Jersey, there's a movie house in Edgewater that's going to have it on August 22nd.
Okay, so Edgewater, New Jersey is going to have it on August 22nd. Or if you're watching this way into the future and it's out of the theaters, look for it
digitally. October
somewhere.
is going to start getting released digitally. So I don't know what platforms that will mean, but yeah, you'll see it.
And then we're going to be looking for the fictional Daryle Lamont Jenkins
being played by Mike Coulter,
a.k.a.
Luke Cage, in a movie called Skin. Like I said, right now it's in post-production.
So yeah, keep your eyes open for that as well. All right. Well, thank you very much, Daryle, and we will see you next time on You People.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome to Ace Rodney Talks for the Superstars. Tonight